what I hope this book is does for people is it helps them through very challenging moments that are, complicated, right, and hard, that are exacerbated by the realities of power and privilege, where we all have these different lives and experiences, but where we can model how we want to be with each other and how we want to show up for each other.
Mm.
I think this happens, right, that this is able to happen because a key feature of the story of the book is the use of stories, right? So we
Mm-hmm.
scaffold stories in this book, and we start with our stories, and we do the stories of our schools and the stories of communities and the stories we tell and all those things. So I feel like the book really employs our collective understanding that embedded within stories is the unique opportunity to reclaim and reimagine how things might be if we can use stories as the beginning of our own self-reflection and growth, and as a way to listen to and lean into the development of others. So
And I'm so glad you ended with that, because that is one of my experiences with you leading a session around this book. It's still so powerful. Some of my colleagues and I, um, and you had us talk about our own stories and the importance of knowing someone's story,
mm-hmm.
because and you said a quote, and I may not get it exactly right, but it was so powerful. It's like something along the lines of, once I know your story, I can never not see you.
Yeah.
And it's like tears in my eyes when I say that, because it is so powerful. And again, even in this brief exercise that you led us through, um, we had the whole room was crying, I think, by the end. We had people
Wow.
open up about growing up in poverty. We had people talking about, I know part of my story is that I lost my dad very suddenly 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Someone else in the room had lost her parents. So can you talk a little bit about that some more, and how you tie that into the book? Because
Mm-hmm.
it truly does bring you to a different level. So not only are you listening when people come to you,
Right.
but you're listening knowing a little bit more about that person.
Yeah.
Often people say you have no idea what people are going through behind the scenes, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But with this concept, that's a little bit less true, because you know some of their stories.
Yeah, so I firmly believe in this. I remember, so in the fourth grade, I got all A's and a C in conduct, right? And my mother went to school because I was going to be in trouble. Now, remind you, my mom had come from this community where, what, you're acting out in school? And if I had been in my old school where my mother's, former teachers had been, I would have been punished by that teacher and punished when I got home, right? So my mother goes to school and she's like, what is she doing? Tell me, she will get in trouble, blah, blah, blah. And my teacher, again, because of her background and lived experiences, basically said, I was a smart kid, but I was too eager. I was overly eager. And my mother was like, what do you mean she's over? What does that mean? What is she doing? And she says, well, when she knows the answer, she raises her hand and she goes, oh, me. Like I was so excited. I wanted to be picked, right? But in that teacher's mind, I was disruptive.
Mm.
And so my mom was like, what is she do? What else is she doing? And so
Right.
she's and
Where's the quote
essentially
unquote bad
the
behavior?
bad behavior was I was
Yeah.
disrupting her
Mm.
classroom, the way in which she'd set up her classroom. So my mom comes home and I am so scared. I'm like, I'm in trouble. And my mom says, it's a good thing to get a C in conduct in the fourth grade. I'm like, what? Right? I never understood that story. I understood what happened that day until I was in graduate school. I'm in graduate school. I'm researching and I'm calling my mom and I'm telling her about my experiences talking to people and collecting stories. And I tell her that I'm interviewing a woman who had taught in a segregated school, had been a teacher in a segregated school, had been a lead, I'm telling her about who I'm interviewing. And my mom tells me, now I'm in graduate school, she says, "Oh, I integrated my high school." I'm like, "What?" She's like, "Yes, me." And then she goes on to name three other people. She was one of four who had
Wow.
integrated Stony Creek High School in Central Virginia. And she had never told me that. She'd never told my brother and I that. Her sisters, my aunts and uncles who talk all the time and tell all the time, had never said anything about that.
Wow.
And so I was like blown away. And then, so she tells me little bits and pieces. And what I came to realize was that that was a very painful time in school for her.
Mm.
So it wasn't something that she wanted to relive. It wasn't a sense of pride in that as much as it was just a sense that I got through, I made it through, right? And part of that was because all of those students, except for one, failed the first year. They failed that first year.
Mm.
And so there was some shame around that as well. But it totally impacted how she parented us through our integrated schooling process, right? How she showed up in that
Yeah.
moment, right? And so the same is true for every person who works in a school building. We don't know what drives them. We don't know the responses behind what they're saying and how they are advocating, right? Or
Right.
for, and fill in the blank. They could be advocating for a student, or they could be advocating for more time. They could be advocating for a particular textbook. They could be advocating for whatever. And we're like, why are they doing this? We don't know. Well, the more we're able to unearth some of this in our relationships with each other, the more we understand what drives people, what they're bringing to the table. And it doesn't mean that we need to agree, right?
Right.
But it does mean that we know when and where they're entering into this discussion. And while we can respect and honor some of those things, some of the time, we need to figure out how we work collectively.